Welcome everybody. This is Jason and the name of this week's workshop is SimPE, A Beginner's Guide Part 1. So essentially, one of the biggest concerns that I get from new creators is SimPE is complicated and SimPE is just way too much. It's overwhelming for new creators and it doesn't have to be. It's a tool. I mean, if you're editing photos, you use Photoshop. If you're writing a document, you use Word. It's a tool. It's there for you to use. So don't get carried away. So let's jump right into the presentation. What is SimPE? SimPE is a powerful, versatile editing tool for Sims2 package files. It was developed by Quaxy, Peter Jones, Numenor, Argyles, Pinhead, and several others in around 2006, and since then it has received numerous upgrades. What are resources? Resources are modular components of the package file structure. They do things like holding a mesh or a texture, referencing other resources, telling parts of an object to be shiny or opaque, and many other tasks. SimPE's construction makes it super easy to add or remove resources from packages. So how is SimPE organized? How is SimPE put together? I think the most important parts are the resource tree, the resource list, and the action pane. So we're going to have a look at each of these. The resource tree that's located in the upper left corner of SimPE allows you to filter resources in a package by type. For example, if you just want to look at all of the behaves, you select the behave resource in the resource tree and it's just going to filter all of those in the resource list. The resource list. So once you've filtered the resources by type, the resource list will display all of the resources for that type available within the package. So in this example, I selected 3IDR in the resource tree, and in the resource list it's going to give me all of the 3IDR. The action pane. The action pane is the lower half of SimPE by default, unless you move the panes around and then it might be located somewhere else. But this is where the magic happens. There are several different panes, or there are several different views within the action pane, but the default is the plug-in view that is specific to each resource. This portion of SimPE, you can also jump over to the resource tab and modify different values, the type, group, instance values in the resource tab, but we will have a look at that later. Then we have these quick action buttons. These are by default, they're located on top of SimPE, just below the toolbar. They do things like open, save, save as, close, and we have this one that looks like a disk. This is important. This is reset layout. The tools menu. The tools menu is located on the top left of SimPE. It links to neighborhood tools, such as Neighborhood Viewer and SimSurgery, the PJSE tools for linking meshes, object tools like Hash Generator and Scene Grapher, and a few other different types of tools. The extra menu. The extra menu allows the user to set preferences in SimPE. It can be used to change how SimPE looks and behaves. Preferences. System folders. So if you go into preferences in the extra menu, the first icon here, well, in this version of SimPE, it might look different if you have a different version, but this is system folders. This is the path to your game data. The file table that's right below system folders allows you to see which game data or which versions of the game SimPE has access to. So for example, if you have everything up to mansions and gardens, including all of the stuff packs, as I have, is going to look like this. And then when you load Object Workshop, all of those workshops should be available to clone objects from. System check. System check can be used to automatically check the paths of your game data. So if for some reason something gets moved around, you adjust something, you change something, System check can help you fix it. Then SimPE settings, that's the next one down. This one is cool because it allows you to change how SimPE looks and feels. There are several different themes, and for example, if your quick action menu disappears for some reason and your panes get undocked or something, this reset layout button is very handy. Then the window menu. So window, it's going to allow you to show and hide different components of SimPE. If you open a new instance of SimPE and for some reason you can't find the resource list, you can show it in the window here. And then we have resource actions. So this is by default, it's up on the top right. It's pinned to the top right corner of the resource list. So you can expand this panel out, and there are a lot of cool things that you can do with it. Filter resources, if you want to show a specific group or a specific instance of a resource, you can use this one. I honestly don't use it very frequently, but again, it's pinned to the top right part of the resource list. If we look down below, we have in the Action Pane by default, the editing view is plugin view. There are other views to the Action Pane, and one of these is the resource tab. This is where we can change the type, group, and instance values of the resource itself. The Object Workshop tab, this is where you can clone objects from the default game data, or you can open your own object and clone it from here. You can also open the object by the GID, so if you know the GID and you want to clone it that way, or by the group ID. The Finder tab, this is cool. Defaulters use this a lot because basically it allows you to scan through all of the game's resources, like scene graph resources and animation resources, that type of thing. By entering a name or by entering a GID, you can locate actual data in the game. If you go to this link that I just pasted, it should be in the resource post too. I will make sure that it is. This is called the SimPE Preservation Project. So as we know, or as we probably know, Ambertation, they shut down, goodness, I want to say 6-7 years ago now, and there isn't the version of SimPE that Ambertation hosted, it isn't receiving updates. So there were a lot of cool features like an online GID database and a few other things that are no longer available. But a lot of newer users, especially Chris Hatch, have come in and they've done a lot of work to keep SimPE alive. They have created newer versions with better functionality. My favorite, honestly, is 7.5.69, the controversial one, the one that has the girl in the preferences menu. But you can download any versions here. If you're a Behave editor, this is important. I don't believe that William is supporting the semantics editor for 7.7.69 and beyond. So if you're a Behave editor or just anyone in general, this is the version that I recommend. And there are previous versions that work just fine, but I like the features of 7.5.69. As I mentioned, here are the different parts. So if we start from the top left, we see this is the resource tree. So when you open something in SimPE, let me just open this one randomly. When you open something in the resource tree, you'll see that it's sorted. There are several different types of resource. That is the resource tree's job, is sort resources by type. So say I want to see all of the XMOLs in this package. I just click on xmol in the resource tree, and then what happens over here? The resource list filters out all of the xmols. We can select the specific resource. The resource list is right next to the resource tree, and by default, it takes up the upper right part of SimPE. And cool things that we can do here. For example, if we want to sort our instances from highest to lowest or lowest to highest, we can just click on this header. We can do the same thing with the offset. We can search these by name. We can sort these so that adult female is on top. We can sort these so that teen male is on top. We sort by the instance value. It's a cool way to find the resource, the specific resource that you're looking for. Now, if we look over here, we can use this pin to collapse resource actions, or we can blow it out just by clicking on resource actions. There are a lot of, if you use plugins, if you manually edit your neighborhoods at all, there are cool features here like delete sims. So for example, if you have a duplicate sim, one way that you can get rid of it is to open the neighborhood file and just randomly like delete that character. You can use this resource here, this action here, just delete. But if you use delete sims, it gets rid of all of the stray memory files associated with that sim. It does a cleaner job of erasing it. Now, if you look at this tab here, this is filter resources, and I don't use it a lot, but it's handy. It's handy just to know that it's there. Very importantly, up here we have the quick actions button. Open, or the quick actions buttons, sorry. Open, we've got new, we've got save as, we've got close, and we've got create a document plugin container. I don't really use that, but very importantly here, we have reset layout. That's going to just refubulate everything, redock all of the panes, reopen any missing windows. It's just a handy feature to have. So now we have the action pane, and by default, the action pane is set to the plugin view. So what does that mean? That means that it's a dynamic view based on the type of plugin that you have selected in the resource list. So let's have a look at this adult female thing. This is our xmol. So this is the resource that determines what category an accessory is in, where it's placed in the catalog, what you can combine it with. That's what the xmol does. So here in the xmol, we can see that this is for 13FF. So I believe that's every outfit type except pregnant. So we want to change that to just every day. We can go 000F. We can just mess with the data here. This is specifically for xmols. If we look at, for example, the TXTR, we click that in the resource tree, and then in the resource list, we're seeing a different plugin. Why is that? Because this is for working with a TXTR. It's dynamic in that it shows you the correct plugin for that resource type. If I were to go and mess with this, for example, if I change this in the resource tab to say ATXMT, it's showing me a different type of plugin now because I changed it to material definition. So let's not mess with that. Let's change that back to texture image. So we changed it back to texture image, and now we have the correct type of plugin. Okay, so that's a little bit about the action pane. Beyond plugin view in the action pane, we still have resource. We looked a little bit at that, but for example, if you're making Skin overlays. You're going to use resource a lot because we change the group number, we change instance numbers, we change every aspect of that. So we need to be familiar with this tab. Wrapper, not a huge thing. I don't really use it a lot. Converter, not really necessary unless you work with custom sounds. Hex, I think the only one who's going to use this are custom sound makers. Object Workshop. This one, I'm going to hit start and bear with me because it takes a little bit to load the file table. There it is. Okay, so now that we run the start button, it loads the file table, and from here, let's say I want something decorative. Let's say I want to clone a vase. I expand decorative, I expand sculpture, and okay, here's one. Cameo vase. Then I just click next, and I would follow the instructions for cloning it, and I could create a vase. Another function of Object Workshop, you can clone your own objects. So we just click that open button, we grab this mesh here, and then we wouldn't move anything here. We just click next, and we can create our own mesh, but I'm not going to mess with it. And then finally, in the action pane, of note is the Finder button. So what does this do? If we're searching for a specific game file, let's just do contains and talk. And I'm just going to do the anims. Okay, so we're just looking for Maxis animations that say talk. And it does kind of the same thing because it's searching all of the game's resources. That went a little bit faster, but that's because I filtered it so that it's only displaying the anims. So for example, say I want this one, social talk bar, basically with no fork. I just double click on that resource, and because I was messing with this package, I just say no, and what it does, it's going to take me directly to the game data, the folder that this is stored in, and then from here I can extract it. Well, I don't want to modify it because this is the base game. But for example, I want to insert this resource into a different package. I can extract, save it somewhere else, give it a different name, and good to go. Let's have a look at the menus. So if we look at the tools menu, we have a lot of cool features. Sim Surgery, if you load, for example, a neighborhood file, if you want to extract, say you have this really cool pre-made in your game and you want to extract that sim, you can use Sim Surgery. Sim Browser and Neighborhood Browser are cool features. They tell you what's within your neighborhood. PJSC, this is a tool for extracting and linking meshes. It's really handy if you're a mesh creator. For object creation, there's a link to Object Workshop, which you can also access from the Action Pane. There's Skin Workshop, which I'm not really familiar with. I don't create skins that way, but I guess it's a cool feature. We have package tools for creating Sims 2 pack. We have, I don't use that option as much, but here in object tools, this is really handy for me because it allows you to import semi-global. Say you're creating one type of object with its own behaves, but you want to import the behaves from a different semi-global type. So you're creating a deco object, but you want specific behaves from, say, a cash register. You can use the import semi-global tool to bring those in. We have Scene Grapher. This is a specific tool for viewing scene graph resources, basically what your sim sees in the game. It lets you know if, for example, a TXMT is connected to the correct TXTR. It allows you to visualize how all of the resources that create the object in game, that create the object's appearance, are hooked together. Hash generator, this is just a tool that we use to generate random values for, like, for example, in skin overlay creation, in some object creation. Say we just need a random set of numbers, we can do that in hash generator. Fix integrity, if you're adding a resource to an object, fix integrity can help you stitch some of those components together. Scan folders, this is a cool feature, Rachel. This relates to your question before. How do I figure out if I have a deco or a duplicate GUID? So we open scan folders, and there's a specific feature here called GUID scanner. We would need to select recursive, because if we don't, it's going to scan only the top level folder. For example,
Okay,
only your
that makes
downloads folder. If you select recursive, it's going to scan all of the subfolders and all of the subfolders and all the way down. And then I'm not going to run this because it takes forever, but basically it's going to return all of the GIDs in your downloads folder, and then everything that's duplicated will be highlighted in red. So that's another cool feature. And that is the tools menu. Preferences. Or, I'm sorry, extras. So extra, basically there are three. I mean, you can run the game from here, but if you're using, it's probably not cool to do it that way if you're already using uh, what you call it, Lazy Duchess's thing, RPC launcher. So you can set your preferences, you can create a preference profile, or you can save your preferences. So if you go to preferences, it's going to open up this preference menu. If you have something missing here, if it doesn't appear that SimPE is finding your game folder, you can look for that in your game files and add that to the list manually. I don't have that. I don't have that, or that. So it's, I believe 7.5, or no, even the older ones, 7.3 point something and above, they can automatically find your game folders. So you shouldn't have to add it manually, but that feature exists if you need to. And then file table, this is, so system folders, this is pointing to where your game resources are, and what file table does, it tells it, for example, in Object Workshop, when it generates a file table, it's going to tell it which versions to generate for. So if I'm doing Object Workshop and I have all of these selected, it's going to generate all of these in Object Workshop, so I can clone from, say I want a vase from Celebration stuff, it's checked here, then that vase should appear among the deco objects in Object Workshop. System check, not a huge deal, but if something gets messed up, you can run system check. And then this one is cool, SimPE settings. So here you can change your language. If you're creating objects, and for example, an object is more than 2000 polys, you have to have advanced mode checked, or you won't be able to import that OBJ. And then I don't really mess with many of the other settings up here. But for example, if your quick actions buttons are missing and your resource list doesn't appear when you open it, you can come into preferences and reset layout, and that's going to do the same thing as the reset layout button in quick actions. Thumbnail size, I just keep it as the default. Game settings, I don't mess with that as much. And then here we have, if you create textures, if you build a DXT, this is going to point to, in your program files, to your DDS utilities. And then here, this is a cool feature. The SimPE comes with several pre-programmed themes. If you want to change your theme, you can select that in the drop down here. You've got soft lilac, pink glossy, deep purple is a cool one. I'm just going to go back to glossy because that's the one that I prefer. And that's the preferences menu. Then Windows, this you can add or remove windows. Like say I want to hide my resource list for some reason. Just go boop and my resource list is gone. And then I unhide it and it's back where it was. That's all that Windows does. Help I don't use very much, and I believe that that's it.